Hello everyone, welcome to From the Star Wars Library, where Star Wars is in print, the Force is with the readers, and Lumaya returns in this episode. I'm your host, Nathan P. Butler. This time we're taking a look back at the Marvel series again for issues 95, 96, and 97, one of the last times we can look at multiple issues together. And this, by the way, is our landmark 100th episode of From the Star Wars Library, and I'm excited to see that it is this story that wound up falling into that 100th slot here for us, because I really like this story. It's one that I got into very much when I was a kid, only owning 2 out of the 3 parts to it. It's actually one that the issues were kept in good enough condition I later gave away my copies from when I was a kid. It's, again, 95, 96, and 97 of the Marvel series, so let's take a look at those. 95, entitled No Zeltrons. We have 96, Duel with the Dark Lady, probably the most iconic Lumaya cover. And we have 97, the one I didn't have as a kid, which is entitled Escape. This is actually the same image here that is used on where you can find it today, which is in Star Wars Omnibus a long time ago, Volume 5. Now, as for when this is being released, it's being released in January, February, and March of 1985. So it's the first Marvel Comics of 1985. I should also note, though, that the first part of this, No Zeltrons, is being released in the same month as the first Ewoks comic from Marvel's Star Comics imprint. So we're entering an era now where there are original stories, non-film adaptation stories, in 2 different ongoing series right now from Marvel, which is a first. Because, again, the only other time they've done that was with the Return of the Jedi miniseries, and, that wasn't an ongoing original series. That was just a film adaptation. Pretty cool time to be a Star Wars reader back then. Sadly, it'll all come to an end very soon. Now, as you may recall, back in the David Michelinie era, we had the Imperial spy Shira Ilan Colibri, and there was a whole issue of her being an infiltrator into the Alliance. She was built up as a possible love interest for Luke. He winds up killing her. He becomes a pariah, only to finally clear his name by finding out that she was actually that Imperial spy. Vader winds up saving her life, and she becomes Lumaya, the Dark Lady of the Sith. We didn't really know that much about her other than that she is this cyborg named Lumaya. We didn't know it was Shira back in her first appearance and only appearance so far as Lumaya, looking a lot more like that kind of character as opposed to the way she actually looks in this 3-issue arc. Saw that back in the issue entitled Figurehead. So it's been a while since we've seen her, but she starts out right off the bat on the first page of the first issue of this 3-issue arc with her new look. Having been blasted by Leia, she has now repaired herself, and she has a new look and a light whip to use. Yes, this is the first appearance of Lumaya's infamous light whip that is essentially part energy and part physical weapon. The story again here is by Mary Jo Duffy. The art is by Cynthia Martin. And again, this is one of those ones where the art is either serviceable or not. And I don't think they did themselves a whole lot of favors on some pages when it came to the recoloring for the omnibus. Like this Rebel, for instance. "I'm not afraid," says the white guy. But I swear, says the black guy. They must have thought between panels somehow he transformed into Lando Calrissian because he has the mustache or something. But again, it's that kind of oddball art. That's Leia, not too happy there. And that makes for some odd artwork, but some of the art later on really works well, for instance, in some of the duel sequences that we get. So it's one of these things where it's kind of a hit or miss thing. Cynthia Martin often is. Not a big fan most of the time, but the way at least that she handles the duels in this, the combat, works pretty well. That I'll grant her. So we meet Lumaya, again, not really knowing who she is, but she's working with someone who looks a lot like that guy Knife back in Wookiee World. Guy by the name of Din Siva. He'll play a much bigger role as we go on with the series here. The guy up there with the long black hair and the very white, pale complexion there. And they are trying to find the rebels, and she learns that this rebel that's captured has a lead on Luke Skywalker, and that's who she wants to exact vengeance on. Though, until we get to the end of the second issue of the 3 here, we won't know why, because we won't know who she really is. And she didn't meet him back in Figurehead. There she met Leia. So, speaking of Leia, Leia has this diplomatic mission to go on to Cabray, the same place from Chanteuse of the Stars, so she's not all that looking forward to going back, and she has some sort of bodyguards with her who are people that are trying to keep the Zeltron homeworld happy, and it's basically... It's the frickin' Zeltron in sync. It's the Zeltron Backstreet Boys. 4 Zeltron dudes who are going to follow her around, be very attracted to her, but eventually become very loyal and wind up being major players in the latter part of this Marvel run. We have Bob, B-A-H-B, or Bab, John, J-A-H-N, we have Maruk, M-A-R-R-U-C, and Rahul, certainly Raul, R-A-H-U-H-L. So it sort of plays on, of course, names from the real world. And they are going to go on this mission, and so is their hero, the guy they're so excited to meet, right? He's all up in Han's face, woohoo, you know? He says, and we're really glad, and this is Raul speaking, and we're really glad to meet you too. Oh sure, you're our hero. Everyone on Zeltron wishes they could meet you, especially the girls. Why, you're the pilot of the Millennium Falcon. Chewbacca the Wookiee is your partner. A legendary pilot and smuggler, and what a navigator. Blew up the Death Star. Why, they never could have defeated the Galactic Empire without your help. And you're modest in everything. And Han is thinking, maybe working with these kids isn't going to be so bad. To which he continues, wait till we tell all our friends we actually got to meet the famous General Lando Calrissian. One of the funniest moments in the Marvel series to me, because it totally plays on it. Of course, Han's immediate thing is, she's right, those little menaces have got to go. Nice. So they're on their mission. It's basically Han, Leia, and of course the Zeltron group. And they wind up with some mismatched luggage. They have one dress for her because some of her stuff went with Luke on his mission instead of going with him, and it got kind of flipped around here. So they decide, the Zeltrons decide, they're going to fix up her dress. Her only dress. And not really turning out so well. When they finally get to a point where she's wearing it, it kind of looks like something that Lucas would have designed for Padme to wear or designed for the films, given what we saw in Attack of the Clones, for instance, and Return of the Jedi. But I actually think it works very well as far as like showing Leia in another way, not necessarily the dress, but they do the hair kind of done up in a different way than normal. She's good at giving them different looks. It's just that the line style kind of makes me scratch my head a little bit sometimes. Only to wind up finding out while they are there that it's a trap. And sure enough, this diplomatic function, it's those pale-faced guys, which we are now learning slowly but surely are the Nagai in this storyline. It's these pale-faced guys, including Knife from Wookiee World, there to hold them all hostage, hold them prisoner. So they're going to have to find a way to break themselves out. Fortunately, by the end of the first issue, there's a lot of butt-kicking, and yeah, they're done. They're out. Their part of the story is effectively over. The first issue, though, No Zeltrons, also sets up a mission for Luke, Kiro, of course, his Iskalonian potential Jedi student, and Danny, who is that Zeltron that we had met first, and Danny actually is falling in love with Kiro and vice versa. So there is a deep connection between those two now. Danny's not just throwing herself at any guy at this point. And they wind up going to a planet called Kinuine to look for the rebels, including the one that Lumaya was questioning there. Kind of a desolate place. At one point, Danny and Kiro go off on their own, and sure enough, they are attacked. They're attacked by, we will know later on, by Lumaya. Luke, for his part, finds Kiro near death, gets him back into the water so that he can live. Remember, he's an aquatic being, and then goes off to face whoever it is that did this to him, and comes face to face in one of those cool face-offs here with Lumaya. The two very briefly duel, in the first issue at least, until Luke is left knocked down and bested. He is going to be captured. As we move into the second issue, it actually rewinds a little bit, and we get the same duel, the same kind of face-off here, including some of the same shots, redone, with some extra panels in between them because the others were intercutting with the action back on Cabray. And we see really one of the cooler lightsaber duels, and Luke is just getting his butt royally kicked here, mainly because of the dual nature of the weapon, part energy, part physical, to the point where she winds up pulling his lightsaber away. Again, he is bested, he is captured. And we continue on with Din and Lumaya talking about the whole issue of, who is Skywalker, why does she have such a grudge against him, and so on and so on. We have the final mention of the Nagai as or the first mention, I guess, of the Nagai as the species that Din Siva belongs to and such. And we find Kiro trying to make his way to try to help Luke and Danny is now a prisoner of Din Siva, as he's trying to study how far the Zeltrons can be pushed. And Kiro finally winds up saving Luke, busting Luke out, and Luke comes up with an idea when he sees Kiro's stinger weapon and his sword. The idea is, you know what, I can combine these. So the next time Luke winds up facing off with Lumaya, first thing he does is force grab his lightsaber back, but he also activates a second one of my favorite images from the Marvel series right there, Luke with the two lightsabers, the regular one and the Shoto. Very much like the design given, of course, to Ahsoka Tano these days in the Clone Wars cartoon series. And they fight, and he's realized who she is. Don't you think this is a little pointless, And she says, don't call me that. Until finally he rips her weapon away, she charges him, and he slashes, cutting off her face mask to reveal, that's right, this is Shira Bree. Lumaya is Shira. Now, we know that, but at the time, everybody's like, holy crap, she's back. That's who that is. That's who Lumaya was, if they even made the connection between Lumaya and Figurehead that looks so different and Lumaya in here. Of course, it's not all good news, because as they look up to the sky, Luke says, looks like something big coming out of hyperspace. To which Lumaya says, then despair now, Skywalker. The Nagai invasion fleet is here. That's right, an invasion of the galaxy far, far away from outside the galaxy, or at least they said at the time. Now it's basically an unknown regions type of thing. They've given a lot of different ways of retconning it away. Suffice to say, it's just an uncharted part of our galaxy, is the way that it's usually thought of. According to the Essential Atlas, it's from Companion Besh, a companion star cluster galaxy. So what we're dealing with here is someone who the Alliance hasn't met before, so it's kind of an unknown threat. We don't know why they're here, what they're doing, other than the fact that they are invading, and they're apparently in league with Lumaya, which probably means in league with those remnant Imperial forces, which it turns out is true as we move immediately to the next issue, with stormtroopers showing up backed up by Nagai. As Luke and Kiro are essentially trying to hide with Lumaya as a prisoner, Danny is being tortured by Din big time, like in a way that's really going to scar her quite a bit mentally, until finally we find that Kiro is able to break in, save Danny. Luke is able to gather a bunch of information from the computer systems there, and they are able to escape. Well, most of them. Because on the way back, Din Siva winds up facing off with Kiro. The two do battle, and they both fall into the water. And all we know is that there is blood coming up through the water. Danny thinks it's Kiro's. There's no way to really be sure. Except, of course, when they get to land, there's this flower sitting there that was one that Din Siva was talking about earlier. So it gives you the impression that Din survived, and Kiro, maybe, maybe not, but probably not at this point. But now we know what the threat is that the Alliance of Free Planets is facing. It's a question of how they're going to deal with it, and is Kiro actually dead? At this point, we believe it's probably the case, but we'll find later that maybe not. Depends on who you ask in terms of who's privy to certain information. I should also note here, by the way, that this issue ends with the little next. Far, far away. No, not so much. That was issue number 97. We won't see far, far away until issue 101. There's some shuffling going on in the chronological order of not just the universe, but the releases here. This is really one of my favorite stories of this, and it really gets things going. It gets the Imperial connection to the Nagai out there, gets the Nagai themselves out there, the invasion fleet. This kicks the post-Return of the Jedi era stuff for the Marvel series into high gear. If only it didn't have to deal with the Hiromi later. But it really makes for kind of a cool trio of issues here. One of my favorite series, or story arcs in the entire Marvel run, perhaps my favorite overall in general in the Marvel run. It is a really fun one to go back and reread here after all these years. So, this storyline, no Zeltrons, duel with the Dark Lady, and escape. Is it an essential read? Yes. Yes, it is. This is the essential clash between Luke and Lumaya. This is the motivations of Lumaya, the return of Lumaya, stuff we need to kind of understand about her, to understand more about when we see her in Legacy of the Force. And of course, it's the beginning of the Nagai Toph invasion, or the Nagai invasion. We'll find it's the Nagai Toph war later on. And of course, it continues the storyline here for Kiro and Danny and Den Siva and such. A lot of important elements are introduced here or pushed forward here, so I can't imagine skipping this as a modern reader, if you're reading Legacy of the Force, or as a Marvel reader. So definitely check out these issues. Again, it's 95, 96, and 97 of the Marvel series. With that, we'll wrap up this episode. Thank you for watching, and may the Force be with the readers.